In the summer of 1985, for the first time since Dr. King was assassinated 17 years ago, 6 of those who worked and struggled at his side as members of SCLC came together to reminisce. The setting was an appropriate one, the cavernous studio of artist Don Miller in Montclair, New Jersey, who was working on a mural on Dr. King for the Washington, D.C. Public Library. The discussants, Reverend Ralph Abernathy of SCLC in Atlanta, Andrew Young, Mayor of Atlanta, Reverend Wyatt T. Walker, pastor of the Canaan Baptist Church in New York, Ms. Dorothy Cotton of Cornell University, the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth of SCLC in Cincinnati, and the Reverend C.T. Vivian of the Anti-Klan Network. In this half hour, you'll hear their personal and intimate recollections of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Dr. King remembered by his fellow soldiers.
First time I met Martin Luther King, I was visiting the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and Dr. King was preaching the sermon, and in charge of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, the church of his father at that time. I remember that he preached the sermon on faith. I was a student at Atlanta University pursuing a master's degree in the field of sociology, and I went over to hear him preach, and that made a lasting impression on me. That was in 1950. We took to each other right away. As I left the congregation that morning, I greeted him, and he greeted me at the door, and 2 days later, we were at Spelman College, and he had my lady. He was escorting my lady, my girlfriend. And so...
Wait a minute, what are you talking about?
And, well, he
ran off with your woman?
Well, he made it out over me, and so consequently I greeted him, and he said, "Oh, you were at church yesterday, and I was glad to have you at church." And I said, "I'm glad to meet you, but you have my girlfriend." We didn't marry, either of us married this particular.
That's why they stuck so closely.
But see, Ralph thinks every girl in those days was his girlfriend. Yeah. He didn't leave anybody any room. I didn't meet Dr. King until about 1956. He was already, I think, very prominent as the young minister who was pulling together a bus boycott in the South. And I was very curious, very impressed that I was meeting him, but he didn't want to talk about the boycott. He didn't want to talk anything but about his children and his wife, and he was completely unimpressed with himself and all that was going on. And I guess I was almost a little disappointed, because I expected to be in the presence of a great man who would give me some great words of wisdom, and he wasn't impressed with himself.
That's great.
I met Dr. King in the spring of 1952 at Virginia Union University. I was in the Graduate School of Religion. He came down from Crozier. He was the president as a senior student body, and I happened to be the president of the union, though I was only a middler, a second-year student. And so we met in what was the head class, and I asked him, did he remember me? And he remember.
He had bad handwriting?
Oh, terrible. Horrible handwriting. Is that right? He said it on his handwriting because I had the task of translating from his handwriting into Buddy on his handwriting. But he wrote me back to me, he did remember the Montgomery bus protest. And on that, I began to be actively engaged in his movement.
I had gotten the dynamic, the charisma of this handsome preacher whose church I was very much involved in. So just as...
this he?
That is he.
Yeah, I was handsome when I was young.
Just as Wyatt says, we revered Martin and didn't argue very much when he suggested that we do something. When Wyatt suggested that I come to Atlanta with him, I knew that I was interested, and I went to have a little talk with my husband, who agreed that, yeah, it would be okay for me to go down for about 6 months. And I guess I stayed for 20 years. But I did go because I had gotten very much involved.
No one of us and no black person in America had lived without hoping to be free.
That's right.
What we chose to do was to find a means and a method and a man that would get us there, right? That's what we were all looking for. Lerone Bennett put it this way, is that if we moved violently, we would be destroyed violently. If we did not move, we would be destroyed spiritually. The challenge was how to move.
And Martin
came on the scene and gave us
the modus operandi.
That's the modus operandi, right. A means, a method, and he was the man.
Well, you must remember that Birmingham, we used to say it just was 6 inches from Johannesburg, South Africa, just very short distance. Every vestige of life was segregated and discriminated. You must remember, we didn't start out with a movement. Now, as was in Montgomery and other places, there had been NAACP, which was largely few teachers, doctors, right, lawyers, that had done it. And you got to give NAACP credit for laying a base. I don't think any of us today want to presume to take credit for everything. We admire everybody who's gone before us to get us to the point.
True.
It was just at this time, I think, that God, the idea and the time and the people had conspired, had gotten together. That's how a movement could get on. He used to say that Birmingham was the magic city, was really the tragic city. Hard like the ore mine, and incorrigible like the steel it manufactured. And in Birmingham, there's been at least 40 or 50 bombings. I lived through 3 of them. I became known by just going around to the little civic clubs, rural and situations, helping people around the right to vote, around well, almost in any place you can tell where the whites stop off living and the blacks begin. Dirt, ditches, open sewer, lack of lights, and so forth. Birmingham was a thoroughly, firmly segregated city. They had an unwritten rule, I've said this before, and it's true, that if the Ku Klux Klan doesn't stop you, the police will. And if the police miss you, then the courts will. So it was a kind of a 3-tier thing. You couldn't win, not blacks.
This is a man speaking who's been beaten with chains. He was bombed out of his bed. His house was bombed. He's been involved in 30-some odd civil rights cases of litigation.
To the Supreme Court.
What I really hear being said here is that there was a team of leadership that supported and helped to create the movement of Martin Luther King. And that it couldn't have been done without him. He clearly was the leader that attracted all of these people. But neither could he have done it without all of the support. And all of the other ministers here, all strong egos in our own right, as you can see.
We're including Evangelist Cotton also.
That's right.
Thank you, Wyatt.
But that it was something special about Martin's personality and about those times that made everybody feel like this was something that was to be a part of.
That's right.
The sterling quality that I perceived from this historical vantage point in Martin is that he was absolutely secure.
That's right.
See, and when you look around this round table, and there are some who could be here who are not here.
That's right.
And see the strong, aggressive, talented people
and proven,
and see that Martin went out of his way to recruit them to be a part of his movement, then you know that this man was secure. And with all of that same aggressive, talented, earnest people, in the movement itself, there never was any not the slightest tinge of anybody trying to upstage Martin.
That's right.
He was the leader without dispute.
Yeah. He turned down to go to Montgomery. He turned down the vice presidency of Morehouse College, the chaplaincy at Dillard University, and I don't know how many bigger Baptist churches.
Dean of the Howard University.
That's right.
School of Religion.
Yeah.
And see, Dexter Avenue was not a big church. It probably didn't have, it wasn't but half as big
About
as
big as this room. A little bit larger, a little bit larger.
And so for a young black man with a PhD
From Boston.
At that
Boston
time,
University to go to Montgomery was in itself a miracle.
Martin went to Montgomery to finish his PhD. All right? He did not go to Montgomery to stay. He wanted to finish all of his paperwork for his PhD.
Oh, I thought he finished.
No, well,
He's still writing his
dissertation. Now get this. The major part, that is the mystical working here, is that 1 week after he finished all of his work, sent it into Boston, Rosa Parks sat down. A people called blacks
had to be
stood
gone.
up.
Nobody.
A man named Martin became the leader. A people named White joined them, and this nation never stopped moving.
There's music that came out of the church. Was that as important to you staff people and lieutenants, if I can be so bold, of Dr. King, as it was to the flock?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
As a matter of fact, I wonder if we could have done some of the organizing that we did without the music. We sang about everything, and we sang in every situation, and we never got to be such I hesitate to use the term top flight executives. We did toss around titles a bit, but what we ourselves did not both sing and enjoy the singing, and I think that spirit, it was infectious. People sang, it was a part of it.
SCLC was a church movement. Martin often said, and it's certifiable, that it was the home mission department of the black church. And without the black church, there would not have been any movement. Its leadership, the site of its meetings, the training ground on the workshops, the rallies which gave people, lifted their morales, the gathering in of the funds, all of that was done with the church at the center.
We came in order to strengthen each other. You would be surprised to know how much strength we gained following a mass meeting. Just to be together.
After listening to Martin Luther King Jr. make speech after speech, night after night, month after month, what was it about him that kept him so fresh, even for those of you who almost knew what he was going to say before he said it?
But he very seldom preached over and over. The amazing thing was the freshness of the preaching every night. Yeah. There were some themes he would come back to.
Thematically, it would be the same, but he had a variety of ways of saying. Now, he often used the same landing strip, which all of us in our craft do. Yes. We say when the plane takes off, one of the most important things is you need to know where you're going to land. That means how to close. Martin asked me in Birmingham, we were sitting around 1 a.m. in the morning in Gaston's restaurant, and he said, what is the first thing you think of when you're going to write a sermon? I said, well, I have to have my 1, 2, 3. I got to have the structure before I can get started. He said, well, when I get ready to write a sermon, the first thing I think about is how I'm going to close.
But you must remember also that everybody came to those meetings expecting something. This was a time of expectancy. All our hopes were that we would move forward. And so that nobody came unfulfilled, at least to the point that they didn't get something. More than that, it was a brotherhood. It was a mean of not only emptying ourselves of fear, of maybe dislike for the system, which some people would call hate and other things, but an opportunity to participate in something that was moving and ongoing.
Most people, not having ever met Dr. King, have a sort of an image of him as a very reserved, eloquent, preacher, leader, statesman kind of person.
And he was all of that.
He was all of that, but he was also the life of the party.
But I've heard now that he had a sense of humor.
Yes, a rich sense of humor, and he enjoyed eating ribs and barbecued pork and fried chicken.
And he liked to eat out of your plate. You know? Yeah, nothing he liked better than to reach out and, you know, he wanted to dip in your plate. That was the ultimate test of fellowship.
In fact, first time I went to Atlanta, he and Daddy King was sitting in the middle of the table, and one of the sisters had brought a pan of neck bones, and they were sitting down there sucking neck bones. And going to town.
Martin loved athletics, loved to play.
Yes.
Never will forget a picture that Wyatt took. I'm playing first, and Doc was pitching, and I think Andy was on third, and Andy and Martin used to joke with each other about I
was on third.
You were on third? And
who's on first? Who's on what?
Yeah, that's right. But I remember Andy and Martin seeing who could outrun each other running backwards. Right? Right, Andy?
Our schedules were horrendous. Juanita would come and bring Ralph a fresh shirt or so and some underwear, and Ann would come and Coretta would come, and we'd sit there in the Atlanta airport and hold hands with them for between flights and then go on to the next stop. And so, as Fred has pointed out, Dr. King was notoriously behind time.
Yeah. Oh, he never was on time.
He always had a phone call to make, and I was always pushing so he'd make the plane. So we were coming through there trying to make this plane, and a sky cap wanted to shake hands with Dr. King.
Yes, sir.
I said, come on, leader, we don't have time for that. He stopped me cold, and he said, if I don't have time to shake hands with him, I don't deserve to be the leader.
Yes. That's what he said.
That's
true. Yeah.
And he was talking about the war on poverty and things like that. Coretta and some of us used to always say that Martin had a war on sleep.
On what?
Sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He did not want to go to bed. I mean, 12, 1, 2 o'clock, he'd want to sit up talking. And then if you finally got him to bed at 2 o'clock, at 5:30, 6 o'clock, he's up shaving with, singing.
And he could call us at all hours.
It would call any time of the day or night to...
Anybody.
Yeah. Did any of you, or did all of you, get an opportunity or think about trying to tell him how you felt about him?
About him?
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I could tell him now.
Yeah. I don't think...
felt very sad about the
I don't think we ever did verbalize it, but I think...
well, I did.
I think our performance...
You did?
Well, he was with him all the time.
Yeah.
What did you say to him?
It was in Memphis, Tennessee. I just took him and hugged him and said, Martin, I am so proud of you. You have meant so much to me through the years, but you meant more to me today than ever before. I want you to know that I love you, and I will always love you. And he said, David, I love you, and I will always love you. And I appreciate what you have done for me, because I never could have been to you what you have been to me. But I want you to know, don't worry about me. I will be all right. And we just get me out of Memphis now.
I love the man. I never met anybody in my whole life. And as has been said here, I always thought, I wish for the moment if somebody tried to shoot him that I'd have the opportunity to be the one to stop the bullet.
Andy, did you ever get a chance to tell Martin how you felt about him?
Not really, because he wouldn't let you. He'd cut you off, and he'd think, I don't need all of that. What do you got? You need to do what I want you to do. You don't answer my mail. You don't do that. You don't need to tell me. If you think a whole lot of me, why don't you go over there and get Bevel and them straight? And he would make a joke out of it.
I know that he loved us, and I know that we loved him. I know he knows that I loved him. It was an unspoken thing, and maybe even expressed on occasion. But he always wanted us with him, and we wanted to be with him.
I believe that every good work comes from God. I believe every good life comes from God as a gift to this world to make light for. Where there is light, the darkness can at least be addressed and maybe overcome. And if I had to talk to Martin today, and we had differences, never to the point where we would dislike or be separated, I think I would say to him, thank you and God bless you for helping to make God real in our generation.
No, I didn't tell Martin. I wouldn't know how, really, if I had a chance. It would sound too artificial. It would sound too much like the regular kind of congratulation stuff. Mm-hmm. And you don't talk to somebody you really care for like that. I tell him, I suppose, thank you for loving us. And you don't really say that to people. Thank you for loving us enough to be you regardless of the situation. Mm-hmm. Loving us enough to be willing and ready to die for us. In fact, did. And you know who he died for? He died for us who were walking around calling each other niggers. He died for us nobody liked. And he didn't have to do a damn thing for any of us. He didn't have to do anything for any of us. He had a PhD. He was a phenomenal person, unusual personality, access to the best that black life had at the time. He didn't have to do anything for anybody. And in spite of that, he did it because he wanted to. He willed to do it. But every man, woman, and child, black, white, yellow, pink, brown, polka dot in this nation is different because of Martin. When I say different, I mean better because of Martin King.